Hello, and thank you for joining us for the TAA webinar, Texts Plus, Ancillary Materials and Companion Sites, presented by Janet Sammons. Janet is an independent researcher, writer, and consultant through her company, Vision to Lead, Inc. She wrote Doing Qualitative Research Online, Qualitative Online Interviews in Real Time, and edited Cases in Online Interview Research for Sage Publications, as well as numerous articles and book chapters. She is an active blogger on www.visiontolead.com and for the Academy of Management, the Ethicist blog. Janet is an editorial reviewer for Sage Research Methods Database, reviews textbook manuscripts, and serves as a peer reviewer for academic journals. Janet is a dissertation mentor for the Walden University PhD program in educational technology. Hello, Janet. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in here today. What I would like to talk with you about, as you know, is the use of companion sites and ancillary materials to expand the reach of your books. So, as Kim mentioned, my publication strategy is focused primarily on writing textbooks. And with my particular areas of interest, qualitative research methods online, I face two challenges. The first is that this is a new area of study, and some faculty may not feel confident teaching courses or using these kinds of approaches in other courses. And the second is that technology, of course, keeps changing. So I felt from the beginning, this work that companion sites could help overcome these problems, because I could share instructional resources and keep them up to date. So with each of my Sage books, I've tried different approaches, and I'll share with you today some of the things that I've learned along the way. I've also been working with other writers, and so, I've done a lot of research beyond my own companion sites to see what kinds of things are being done and what the options are. And so, it's clear that there are, a lot of different variations, and each publisher, handles it in a slightly different way. So I think it's really important to begin to consider what we want to do when we're trying to align our proposals with an appropriate publisher and reach the audience we hope to reach. So I hope that this webinar will give you some ideas about, what might work best for you. So, first of all, why bother even thinking about this? I gave you my reasons, but I think that, in general, the difference between instructional books like textbooks and other kinds of books is that, we're writing them for the purpose of teaching and learning. And, we hope that not only that, people will, of course, use our brilliant ideas and change the world, but we, certainly hope that someone is going to adopt our books and teach them in their classes so that the, books are sold and used. So today, I'm not talking about marketing-oriented book websites, which is kind of a whole other topic. I really want to focus more on instructional research kinds of sites that complement our efforts to teach and learn. So the first thing I think we need to consider is our audience. And, while, certainly academic books may have a general circulation here, again, we're trying to focus on them as a medium for teaching and learning. But at the same time, textbooks aren't used solely in a course context. So it's important to think about, whether you hope your book will reach one or more of these audiences, and then start thinking about the types of materials that a kind of audience would want or need and how they prefer to access them. So, do we hope that professionals in the field or practitioners might pick up our book in order to, update their skills, or, in addition to the, instructor looking for instructional resources, might graduate students or students working on particular projects pick the book up and want to use it. So the kinds of resources these types of readers would want might vary considerably, and as we see, the ways that they might get a hold of them is going to vary. So, in doing some kind of preparation for this webinar and looking at all the different options that are out there, there are a lot of different kinds of companion sites. Some are hosted by a third-party platform, and as we'll see, as I'm going to show you some examples in a moment, some of those include, many technical features that a publisher, kind of be beyond the scope of what, a publisher might do on their own. Then some are hosted on a publisher's website, and others are created by authors and, hosted on their own websites. And, certainly might be, author could have a website or a blog, in combination with what the publisher has offered. Some of these sites are static. In other words, once we have given the publisher our materials for the ancillary resources we want to offer, those are the same resources that are going to stay on that site until you have a new edition of the book and you have a chance to update it then. So that's, it's one possibility. Another is that, the publisher may allow for some periodic updates, or, perhaps one update, after the book has been in circulation for a year or two, but prior to a second edition. But then if we have a site that is maintained by the author, of course, we have a chance to update it whenever we want to. Then, once we dig into the ways that, different kinds of publishers make their work, this work available, sometimes I found that they have actually a separate digital subscription. So in other words, a student or a reader or the instructor could require that the students would purchase this digital subscription that includes, a lot of study materials that would go along with the book. So that's a separate cost in addition to the price of the textbook. The second is an interactive book, and so this would be where, particularly with an ebook, thinking about an ebook, where the ancillary materials are actually linked into the book itself, and the author, or not the author, the instructor has the opportunity to then add his or her own comments, assignments, projects, etc., right into the ebook website. The third type on the publisher's platform would be password-protected resources. Sometimes nobody can get into it unless they are using this book as a textbook in a course, and other times the student resources are available publicly, but the instructor's resources are behind a firewall, and only an instructor using that book for a course can access it. And then the final would be, open to anyone. So some publishers' companion sites are open to anyone, and certainly, many authors' book websites are open to anyone. So thinking back to the slide from a moment ago, the different kinds of possible readers, if you're thinking that your book might be of value to professionals or people who are not teaching this in a formal course, perhaps even someone who is using it for a seminar or a workshop outside of a formal academic setting, then you might not want your companion site to be in one of these kind of separate password-protected areas that would not be available to someone who is not an instructor in a course. Then, we also might want to think about, how we can use, whichever of those options, our publisher has chosen and we've chosen together with them. How might we use those, the advantages and disadvantages, to for our own purposes. So it could be that, with the open resources, we're able to then link from the site to our social media pages, to our blogs, where we can then update the materials, provide some new insights, or link to some more. We've come up with some new assignment ideas, or we've got some more resources we'd like to add, so we can kind of put those out there, but link the person back to the publisher's website. Certainly, reviews on bookstore sites like Amazon, or trying to get our book into professional associations newsletter or website, or whatever. We can whatever resources are available publicly, we can link those out to tie in our promotion. Even though I'm not talking here about marketing per se, we might feel that the instructional resources we have to offer make our book more interesting and appealing to potential instructors. So, how can we, think about, putting these, different options together in a kind of systematic and purposeful way that will help us to achieve our goals. So, just based on this initial set of the slides, a couple of the questions I would suggest that you might want to think about are, to begin with, is my proposed book a candidate for a companion site? Because not all publishers even offer companion sites. And as I say, and as you'll see when I share examples, they vary quite dramatically. And here's a quote from one of the publishers, Routledge, and they say, our research suggests that online resources can play a key part in teaching and learning, but we create companion sites only for those projects that illustrate clear reasons why an online resource would be a good complement to the book and beneficial to students. So please clearly explain your reasoning. So this is something that, it may or may not be asked for in the proposal template, but if this is something you want from your publisher, then, it should be part of your proposal and part of your discussions with an acquisitions editor. Once you get into those conversations, I would suggest that you ask about the publisher's expectations about online resources or companion sites. Who will, have access to it? How often, might it be updated? And what have they found from their own kind of internal research that is the most successful? So, ask which of the companion sites in your, in the field or discipline, my book would fit into, have been, taken advantage of by instructors and students. Which ones get the most traffic? What kinds of feedback have you gotten? Can you provide access to an example of a successful instructor resource? Because I can tell you from just preparing for this session that some of these publisher sites, require extreme vetting and, your firstborn to get into the site. So, ask your acquisitions editor about access and see if you can look at what they think are good examples. So with those thoughts in mind about the types of sites that, might be available through your publisher, or, if not, kinds of sites that you might want to create yourself, let's now think about the types of materials we might want to put on those sites. So in looking at kind of some of the practices being used today, there are customizable digital resources. I gave the example a moment ago of the interactive book where the instructor can insert comments or assignments or discussion questions, right into the digital book. And there are a variety of different kinds of customizable digital resources. Obviously, these are going to involve the collaboration of the author as kind of a subject matter expert with the technical staff, that the publishers made available for this project. Then, the second type would be separate instructor and student materials And we'll look in a moment at some examples of those. And then the third would be general materials for anyone. And so these might be particularly for something that is a book about developing particular kinds of skills. These might be how-to materials that would be relevant to any reader. As you could see from the slide I used promoting this webinar, there are a variety of kinds of instructional resources. So, part of the challenge for you as an author would be to think about, which of these types are going to make sense given your book. So let's think through some of the questions we might consider to make those kinds of decisions so that you can create a compelling proposal, that will hopefully allow you to get the kind of cooperation you want from your publisher. So, the first is, how will they access the resources? What kinds of materials, what kinds of presentations do you want? Media, text, other kinds of digital materials, and what is the academic level? So, do you have traditional college-age students, adult students, professionals who are, perhaps out in the workforce, who might be using this book to update their skills? So, who are these readers? How do they like to, do they want to download a PDF? Do they want to interact with something that is kind of more like a social media interface? What's going to be useful to them? And then, depending on your subject matter, is it more abstract kinds of subject matter or practical? So, might you need more explanations for kind of abstract, conceptual, theoretical ideas, more examples to, make, help a student make sense out of, these big ideas? Or is it, practical subject matter where you need how-to oriented resources? Do you think this will be a primary text or a secondary text? So, how important is this going to be to the students? How can you use your resources to, really make this material most relevant to your readers? Is your field fast-moving or stable? I gave the example of mine where, part of my issue is that the technologies change and I need to deal with that. I asked one of my friends who also writes on these kinds of topics about her own practices with ancillary materials, and she felt that it's really important to develop your own website, even if you have a robust publisher's website, so that you can keep links updated and provide new materials as the book is kind of out in the circulation for a while. So the number of things to think about. So I want to share some examples with you, and this is going to be kind of a technological experiment to to pull this off here today. I have a variety of examples I'd like to show you that kind of illustrate some of the different ideas I was just explaining. Okay, so these examples, I have two examples here of author-maintained websites that are linked to the publisher's page for the book. And this is our own Katie Linder, TAA star. So, here is the publisher's page, and then you can link straight from that onto her page for the book, and then she's maintaining this. So she's kind of overcoming the issue that I just described, where the publisher's doesn't have the bandwidth to keep updating the page. Here, as she develops new materials, she can add them in. This is another one. This the page is on the Pearson website. This is a textbook that's been in circulation for many years. I used it when I was in um, school, so I looked at the current edition of it. So in other words, they've had many years to develop, just tons of resources, and they're all, listed here, on a site that the authors maintain, but is linked to the publisher's page. So, you're getting the advantage of having your companion site in front of anyone who is looking at your book. And in both of these cases, as you could see, these are completely open. So anyone who is, looking at the book page on the publisher's site and thinking about whether this is a book they want to teach, what kinds of resources they might use to teach it, it's freely available. So it can serve that kind of, promotional purpose as well. Okay. Now, the pages I've linked to this in this browser window are ones that I had to get some special permission, and I thank the publishers for allowing me to share some of these resources. Now, this one we are not logging in, but this is an example of the additional digital subscription. So, someone buys your Pearson textbook, they can then purchase a subscription to this additional, kind of study materials that are available. Of course, they're all, digital friendly, mobile friendly, etc. And they, so, they get the mobile app and all sorts of other, features that can be used in conjunction with the book. Then this is another one from, it's a little bit different, from McGraw-Hill, and this one is called Connect. And so this, again, this is a separate, whole, you can look at this on the side, assignments, course management, assignment creation. So this would be an example where it's a customizable digital resource. So if I'm using this textbook in my course, I can go in here and add my own assignments, right into the digital interface for the book. So here, it's a page you can see, hello, Janet, you can add your course. So I could add in the course I'm teaching that uses this book, and, just completely integrate with the online textbook. And then the interface the students see, you can see it's very, it's tablet friendly and all of that. So, this is the really, kind of high-end type of companion ancillary materials that really go beyond simply developing, PDFs someone can download. Okay, I want to share this one first. Now here we have some combinations. So this, one of the things that I discovered in doing the research for this presentation is that even within the same publisher, you might find that there are a range of types of companion sites and availability of materials, even, like I say, within the same publisher. This is why I would urge you to look very carefully at the kinds of resources the publisher you're, kind of looking at as potential for your book, to see, whether it offers, the kind of flexibility you would like. So here, with this one through Sage, here, we have the companion website for the book, and this includes quite a lot of material that the instructor has created. So you have that kind of, I would say homemade in a good way, personalized feeling, from this author. He's really hands-on. He's, created, a whole set of videos, made by the author, as well as clips from YouTube. So the author has made introduction videos for each chapter. And then, some of them are from other authors that he's, chosen from YouTube, but primarily, lots of materials by this author. And you can see that he has put a lot of time into creating these materials. You can see it's a pretty long book, all of his chapters, so it's a lot of material. But it doesn't stop there. Then we have the interactive ebook. And so here we have the miracle of technology. It will let me show this to you. Well, maybe it's not going to let me in here this time. So you'll just have to take my word for it that when we get into the interactive book, it gives you a chance to insert and embed your own material together with the material from the book. So, this would be useful not only for an online class, but, for a class where, students prefer to get the material online. Now, once again, in terms of access, this one, I was able to get access to this vital source, to take a look at it. This is a third-party site that goes off of the SAGE publication site, into this other universe of materials. If I'm someone who wants my book resources to be available to anyone, to a graduate student or a professional reader, then this might not be the place I want to focus, because it might be hard for them to get permission from, they have to go through a whole permission process with the publisher that presents kind of an obstacle people might not want to go through. But on the other hand, if I'm writing something that really is aimed at classroom use, then this would be a fantastic opportunity. On this particular one, under the instructor sources, there's not very much that he kept apart from the students, mainly PowerPoint slides, and there are a few assessment materials. And then okay. And then with this group, one reason you might decide that using a companion site is something that is important to you, given the nature of your book, is that you may need to share features that simply won't work on a page. They're not going to work on a print page and would be quite costly to embed into, an ebook. They involve, going to different sites and different kinds of things that, would be hard to do. So I've got a couple of examples to show you with this. And with these, we can't go in and look at the detailed stuff, but because, again, if you're not teaching the book, you can't access the material to review it. But, here we have interactive animations as a technical course. So it includes, this kinds of stuff. Then, there are, lots of kind of online laboratories, online kind of interactive assignments, programming assignments, etc. So this, would be an example of using the companion site to do something that you could not do within the, parameters of a traditional book. Another example, is the use of audio. I mean, obviously, we can't use audio in a textbook. We might be able to use it in an interactive book. The interactive book technology is, that's, I'd say, it's fairly costly. If you don't have a really widely used kind of the type of textbook that would be adopted for, say, an entry-level course that's taught in every university, publishers may just not be willing to invest in it. So, here's an example of using embedded audio on a textbook site to do language learning. And another one, this one is, from a book about history and art. And so here, you know, the textbook companion site can be used to present, you know, kind of a little bit more visual detail than might be possible simply in the kind of figures and photographs, etc., that you might include within a book. This one has links to films. So depending on, you know, this particular topic, the author felt that, you know, the author and instructor, you know, would have the access to, you know, a whole set of films they could assign, you know, as a part of the course. So, you know, and then this one is an example, you know, going outside of the publisher's website, that the publisher has created their own YouTube channel where they have, you know, a number of videos from different books. So, you know, another set of options. Okay, and this one, I appreciate Routledge giving me the permission to get into this. This is an example of kind of a, you know, a little bit, I would say, more sophisticated type of publisher's website. You know, it doesn't have all of those digital features, but does have, you know, quite a lot of materials that the instructor can download. So there's a sample syllabus, learning activities, and then this I thought, you know, was really great because they, you know, for each chapter of the book included, and like I say, you know, this is not super high tech. You know, you're downloading a Word document, but it's a Word document that shows you, you know, all kinds of, you know, additional, you know, assignment ideas, etc., you know, for, you know, that particular book. So, you know, again, this is an author who's really put the time in to make this a course that, you know, anyone could pick up and teach. So we'll come back to our slides here. So, you know, what I've learned, you know, from my own sites, and it's been, you know, kind of challenging because it's hard to really get very specific feedback from users about, you know, what they have found valuable in the materials that I've put together. But what I've learned just, you know, from looking at, you know, other companion sites and, you know, what seemed to make sense for my own work is, you know, think about assignments that are customizable for a variety of different academic levels. You know, I want someone to be able to access materials they can plug into another course. So, you know, with mine, it's about research methods, so maybe this is not an instructor who can teach an entire course about online methods, but, you know, maybe they've got a couple of units within the course, so they can just, you know, kind of plug and play. They could take some materials and just, you know, plug them right into their own courses in whatever way, you know, makes the most sense. But at the same time, I want to create assignments that are maybe a little bit more creative, different, because, you know, as the author, I'm immersed in this subject matter. You know, I've been thinking about this stuff night and day. That's not the case for the instructor. So, you know, maybe I can come up with some, you know, really interesting assignments that would, you know, make this, you know, an exciting learning experience. So, you know, are there experiential, you know, even field-based kinds of activities I might suggest that would, that might be different than what, you know, instructor would come up with. Maybe I want to suggest some collaborative types of activities for small groups or teams, as well as kinds of activities that would be useful for an individual, someone who is picking up this book, you know, trying to update their skills. They've done research, but they haven't done it online. They need to think about, some of the design steps. So they want, kind of maybe more practical types of activities that would help them to think through how they might use what they've learned from my book. And then, perhaps, writing journal kinds of prompts. So, someone who is either using this book as a part of a course or independently. So, look at examples in your field. If you're someone who teaches, then of course you've got an advantage here because you've got the experience developing assignments that are appropriate to your subject matter. But if not, then doing a little bit of research or consulting with other instructors would be helpful. In terms of media, this is something that I've continued to work on as I've developed companion sites for each book. For the 2015 book, I created fairly substantial media pieces that were maybe 15, 20, 25 minutes. It really went into detail about the concepts of each chapter. When I moved to the second, to the follow-up book that was published in 2016, I took a different approach. I decided to make very short media pieces that were only like maybe 2 minutes that just explained, say, a figure or a particular concept rather than going into detail about a whole section of the book. And then, working with the publisher to make those resources available as audio only as well as in an audio-visual format. So think varied styles. It may be that your audience would prefer to simply, listen to a podcast while they're reading something, or it may be that the nature of your subject matter is that you really need to show them how something is done, or to provide some visual elements that illustrate, more complex kinds of ideas. So just a few more questions to think about at this stage, and then I'd like to open it up and hear your thoughts and questions. So if you want to work with your publisher on a companion site that they will host, or you want to ask your publisher to provide a link to a site that you are going to maintain, those are decisions that you need to think about, really at the time that the proposal is being accepted. So, what is the development process for materials? Who are you going to work with? It's probably not going to be the acquisitions editor. They're going to hand it off to someone else. Who is that? Can you talk with them? Can you get the dialogue started, because that will help you decide how to proceed. Because particularly if you're looking at some of these technical interactive kinds of pieces, what is your role as the author? Are you a subject matter expert? Do you have the ability to design the way some of those pieces might look, or is that something that is done by technical staff, and you're really just kind of on the sideline with it? In looking at the sites I shared with you, it was clear that the authors have a very different role depending on the type of site. So what is that? What is the expectation for this given publisher? And then what is the process for maintaining the content? Can it be updated? What's the frequency for updating it? And that my experience has been that once the material is on the site, it's not updated until a new edition of the book comes out. But that's something that may be different depending on the publisher and depending on the nature of the book. So that would be something you'd want to think through. And then, what will be available for open access? Because, if you have potential readers who are not teaching this in a course, what will they be able to get? And also, what can you use to link, to your own blog or to your social media. Can you kind of get some of that media out there, as a way to promote your book and get discussion going about your book or not? So, a few questions to think about, and then just two other concepts I wanted to bring in front of you before we open it up for questions. In my experience, when I first started writing books, I completed the manuscript. I mean, I discussed the companion site from the beginning at the proposal stage, but I completed the book before developing the resources and submitting them. And it's one of these things where just about the moment that you're thinking, oh, great, I finally finished this book, then all of a sudden it dawns on you, oh yeah, I promised to do all these resources, so I'm not done yet. So, but at the same time, while working on the manuscript, I kept, building my ideas for, the kinds of resources I wanted to create, but I kind of didn't start working on them until I'd already completed the manuscript. Whereas now, I think that it makes a lot more sense to consider a more parallel kind of process. So, while the research and writing is underway for the book, to try to, open up channels of communication with people in your field, people who are teaching in this field, people who potentially might adopt your book, students who are studying in this field, and whoever you have the opportunity to interact with, either online with social media or webinars, or even, at conference presentations, looking for places where you can learn from people, so you're not just simply, throwing stuff out there and putting, as you can see, there's quite a lot of time involved in developing these materials. So you want to make sure that you're, putting that time to good use. So I'd like to, open it up and see what thoughts and questions you might have about these various stages, the types of sites, the types of materials, and the ways that you might go about creating those materials.
Thank you, Janet, for that excellent advice on ancillary materials. We do have one question, but I would like to tell everyone again, if you have a question, please type it into the question section on your control panel. It does take a little bit of time for it to show up in the question box. So if you can do that now, that would be great. So this question, first of all, is a comment. Thanks for the great overview. How does an author prioritize when it comes to media? What strategies do you suggest for deciding which options to pursue?
I think, this is where, I would think about your subject matter. As you're, looking at your manuscript, and, if you have a situation where you're getting some reviews of your manuscript as you're going, which, with, again, all of these practices vary by publisher, but, for example, with my publisher, with the first book, I submitted the chapters in kind of chunks. So I had a chance to get feedback from a set of readers while the book was in progress. If your publisher is not reviewing the book in that way, then, this might be where you can tap, some of your colleagues, even if they're not going to read the entire thing, in detail, to take a look at it and give you some feedback. What do you think needs a little bit more explanation? And, where might some, media be helpful? To me, this first kind of box here, is really the important question. If we've got some abstract ideas or perhaps some overarching ideas that are covered in, chapters throughout the book, maybe it's something you're building on throughout the book that you want the reader to keep in mind. Well, you want them to keep in mind. That doesn't mean that they've got 10 million other things going on in their lives. they might not remember that, you thought was a critical point 2 chapters ago. Well, maybe now is the time, a media piece could say, in chapter 1, we looked at this, foundational da-da-da-da, and then in chapter 3, we built on it, and now we're going to look at how these pieces fit together in whatever context. So, that kind of, helping people to connect the dots, the overarching ideas that you think are important, or trying to make sense out of, abstract or theoretical or kind of philosophical ideas that, are important to understand, but, a lot of people find very difficult. And, thinking about learning styles, some people are oral learners or visual learners, and, being able to see you walk through something and, explain how these ideas fit together, might be very helpful to them. And then, on the practical side, one of the sites I had as a potential one to share, didn't share in my examples, was from a book on using NVivo, so using a software product where, it would be very helpful to be able to look at a media piece that shows, how you put these steps together. I can read this, I can look at the diagrams in the book, but, show me how these steps fit together. So, those are kind of the two ends of the spectrum that I think, just from my point of view as an instructor as well as an author, having worked with, students over the years and, finding out the kinds of things that they, find challenging, those would be, a couple of suggestions I'd offer.
Thank you, Janet. The next question is, does an author typically sign a royalty contract for their work on a publisher's website, or is it mostly done as a for-hire payment?
Well, at least, in my experience, and I've published all of my books with Sage, and so, the way that they work, the companion materials, are part of my book agreement and part of my, I make a decision when I'm submitting things, I develop a lot of diagrams and models. It's kind of I'm a very visual communicator, so I create a lot of materials of that kind, and so, I will retain the copyright, for those materials, and that's laid out in the, kind of use of materials agreement that you fill out when you're submitting a manuscript. Typically, when you submit a manuscript, let's say, for example, if you had let's say you had a diagram from another author, like, Cresswell, something like that, a table from somebody else's book, and you would have to ask that person for permission to include their resource in your book. All of those permissions are listed in a form that you submit with your manuscript. So, I would lay out, the materials that I'm retaining copyright for, or my intellectual property, in that kind of a form. I haven't worked with a publisher that has used the kind of interactive book or kind of the separate subscription service. So I don't know how that is handled. I don't know whether that is, the materials you're submitting, whether it's just part of your, royalty and, that's the way that you're compensated for it, or whether that is a separate contract. In looking at the sites that I reviewed, and like I say, getting access to them was no easy feat, but looking at them, it's clear that there are other people's names that were not the author. So, clearly there are, other, people developing these interactive materials, and how the author is involved with that. I simply, I can't help you with that. I don't know. So that would be something that I would suggest that you would ask at the proposal stage. If you are, if you're developing something like, introduction to algebra that's going to be used in 10 zillion courses, you hope, then, and you working with a publisher that offers that kind of interactive materials, then, I think that would be a part of the discussion.
Okay, the next question is, any suggestions on how to get input on what type of ancillaries are most valued by adopters and students? And this person is also saying thanks for the great information.
Well, it's very tricky, because especially in a global environment. I mean, who's using your book? I mean, it was kind of funny. When I was doing research for this presentation, I actually came across a website where somebody was talking about using my book. Well, it was news to me, and they gave really great feedback about it. The post had been made in November, but nobody. This was the first time I found out about it. So, your readers are out there. How do you communicate with them? That that's a challenge. That's why I think this diagram that I put together here. As I go into my next book, this is I'm going to be much more intentional about working in this way and trying to create some opportunities to interact with the kinds of people who would be interested in my book, and the kinds of people in my field that who might be able to give me some feedback. I think this is something that you can also do in a very kind of purposeful way with, say, a conference presentation, where you can actually design the presentation such that it gives you the opportunity to find out what participants find useful. So I think it just with today's connected world, finding the online communities and professional groups that relate to the subject matter of your book, and trying to find either things that people are discussing that would help you to see where their needs are, or creating opportunity to ask the question. I think for me what has over the years been the most valuable is that I teach the kinds of people who are the kinds of people that would be reading my book, and I work with graduate students, I work with doctoral students. When I'm writing and developing materials, I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking about the kinds of questions that people have asked me, the kinds of obstacles they've had, in trying to understand material from other books and research methods resources, and that's really informed my work. So I have a real appreciation for what I learn from my students. So I hope that some of those approaches might be useful to the person that asked the question.
All right, the next question is it typical or acceptable to hire another company or person to develop homework exercises or problem sets? I often see different authors on a companion workbook, but what about homework exercises in the textbook itself?
I've never heard of anybody doing that, but I don't know that means that it's impossible. I think partly it comes down to the kind of financial side of it. Typically you're not making like a ton of money writing academic books, so if you're going to then pay someone else to do part of it, that might be kind of expensive. If you have a co-author, or you're looking for co-authors to collaborate with on a book, it certainly might be that you've got someone who is really strong with somebody with a lot of teaching experience, who has a strength in that area, who could take on more of that side of the work, while someone else is doing more of the writing. So in terms of contracting out with someone else yourself, I'm just not sure whether that would be financially wise, but I don't know that there would that a publisher would have a problem with that. I think they would probably just see it in the same way they would view having a co-author.
All right, we have one more question. Do you have suggestions for website platforms for developing and hosting your own resource pages for both the developmental process and as well for the launch?
Well, there's certainly lots of free platforms out there, like Blogger, and there's a free WordPress. If what you're looking at is a fairly simple site, then that might be adequate. I use a hosted WordPress site, that wasn't hard to learn how to use. I'm always learning, and I would point the participants in this webinar to the recent webinar that we had just a couple of weeks ago about the screen casting, which was, I thought, excellent, and I got lots of ideas I'm hoping to use when I'm creating the next set of materials. It does become, it's kind of a whole, part of the reason I suggested doing this webinar is that, it really is a whole nother arena beyond writing a book. It's an extension of that work. It requires, a different kind of set of skills. So, I don't have, kind of a one-size-fits-all answer. I would just, look for something that is going to be stable and easy to use, easy to update, and, gives you the flexibility to, include the kinds of materials you want to use.
All right, well, that is all the questions that we have today. Janet, did you have anything?
Well, I wanted to just give a shout out and a plug for, so if you cogitate about these things over the summer, then, there are a couple of webinars in the fall with Katie Linder, who is really, does a fantastic job with developing these kinds of materials. So these might be a real, good complement to, today I've tried to give you kind of the more strategic side, in terms of thinking about your plan, but then when you get into how am I going to actually do it, then, Katie's webinars will be, put these on your calendar right away. And then finally, I'm offering a class called Create Your Publication Strategy, which also encompasses the kinds of materials that someone would want to include with their with the book, or with other kinds of self-publishing or other kinds of materials. So we've got two sections in the fall, one focused on kind of more broadly on career success, and one specifically around thinking about your publications and social impact. So if any of these interest you, I hope to see you again.
Thank you, Janet. Thanks for the plug of the next two webinars that we're doing in the fall. We do have one more webinar this spring. So if you have not done so already, I encourage you to register for that one. It is a two-part series entitled Marketing, Are You Kidding Me? I'm an Academic, Marketing That Matters, presented by Megan McIntosh. It's going to be held Monday, May 1st and Monday, May 8th, both from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you've missed any of TA's past webinars, you can watch them in the Library of Presentations on Demand on the TA website. You can find the link under the Resources tab. Again, thank you, Janet, for sharing your expertise with us, and thank you all for participating in today's presentation. Have a great day.